Hello tanks and tankettes, welcome to Supporter Week video number 6, and today we're back with tanks. Well, technically it's only half World of Tanks. The second half of this video is going to be some Armoured Warfare video, but it's not going to be an Armoured Warfare replay, and I haven't really shown any of those yet because, well, firstly I've only been sent like 2 or 3, but secondly I still don't like their replay system that much. They, for my liking, miss too much information out as it is at the moment. I've no doubt that it will improve with time, but the fact that you can't see the player point of view, that you literally only get a third person kind of free cam point of view, is a major drawback, because being able to see the exact actions of a player is extremely useful when you're doing one of these replays. You can start to guess at their motivations, you can see the things that they're focusing on, you can see whether they're in sniper view or not, when they're taking shots in third-person view or not. So there's a whole host of information that you just don't get from AW replays at the moment. So it's not an AW replay, it is in fact somebody's live recording of a match, and it's the other half of a bit of footage that was sent to me previously that I've used in a previous Supporter Spotlight video, so you may recognise the vehicle in there. First off, however, we've got this game from Katia, and this is a bit of a blast from the past, because this is a 9.4 replay from World of Tanks, and this is a map that we have not seen around for a while. This is Pearl River. Now this was some kind of Clan Wars match, and I have a suspicion that the enemy team were the defending team, so possibly this was a landing zone, or they were pushing into some enemy territory on the Clan Wars map. I don't really have that much of an understanding of Clan Wars, because I've basically never taken part in it myself. It's been just either a case of like the clans I've been in have never really been the kind of more serious-minded competitive clans, or else there's just not been the time. Mostly it's, well, both actually. I could have, you know, if I'd really been that interested, gone and found myself a clan that was doing Clan Wars. I think when I was playing World of Tanks a lot more regularly, I would have probably been considered good enough, because it's not so much about individual player skill with Clan Wars. It does help. It's more about the ability to follow team instructions and, you know, stick to the plan that the team commander calls out. And of course you also need a good team commander, which is a skill in of its own right. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, with doing YouTube and everything, and Clan Wars generally being on a very fixed schedule, they have to be available at certain times, I guess I was just a bit too lazy, and it just seemed a bit too much work for, yeah, basically like really structured team battles where you just use the same tactics on the same maps pretty much over and over again. That wasn't the most interesting thing to me. And of course, more latterly, Wargaming have started doing things like having vehicles that you can only get as a result of doing well in Clan Wars seasons. But even then, it's not quite enough to seriously tempt me. So I still have this vague notion that someday Clan Wars, you know, is a thing I'd like to do maybe. But at this point, I think I'm just too out of practice with World of Tanks generally, and my interest level is just too low. Like, it was never that high in Clan Wars to begin with, and now my interest in World of Tanks is probably lower than it's ever been. Although, you know, I still do have enjoyable games, but yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I'm rambling about completely, you know, whatever things that have nothing to do with the match at hand. So let's talk about that instead, shall we? So, the enemy team have a lot of IS-3s, and I believe that is still a favoured tank for Clan Wars. They've also got a tank destroyer, a 5100, and they had a scout as well. Katia's team, by contrast, had 3 scouts, a mix of heavy tanks, and a Yak Panther 2 as their tank destroyer. Now, I'm not quite sure about the use of tank destroyers these days. They tend not to be favoured just because they lack the flexibility. Although they can be good in defensive setups, but they still tend to lack like, they don't have the rate of fire of heavy tanks. They don't have turrets being a big thing. They have less hit points. They have worse view ranges. They tend to have not great armor. So yeah, there's a reason there's only one per side. But with the mixed setup they've got, I mean, I don't know if that's just the tanks they had available or what. But in this case, it's going to prove difficult because the enemy team with that many IS-3s, they've got a lot of armor and a lot of hit points at their disposal. So what they have managed to do is take out a 5100 and a scout already. They were able to, their scouts, and they lost an RU in the process, were able to determine the location on the K line of the couple of enemy tanks that were there, because most of the enemy team is in defensive positions near their cap. There are a couple keeping those two tanks there, the T-32, and I think that was another IS-3, bottled up there. And Katia is, of course, in this position, and she's able to basically bait to their fire if need be, and also potentially spot them. So they've lost 3 tanks themselves, an IS-3, Panther 2, and one of the scouts, but the enemy team has, well, they've lost, like I said, the AMX, which is an important one to take out, actually. The clip potential of the 5100s is... like keeping the AMX 5100s alive is usually quite important because they've got no armor, but with a full clip you can take out a full health enemy IS-3, for example. So what they've done is, I cut out like 2 minutes there, they drove a couple of their tanks all the way around to the other side, and they now are starting to make a push. So Katia's obviously had the order to start poking these guys to get them to focus her, to do some damage in return if she can. She's actually bounced quite a lot of shells already. Now, this might seem like really terrible play, and it would be in a random battle, but this is not a random battle. One of the very important parts of team battles generally is just to follow orders, to do what you're told, and sometimes that means throwing your tank away even, or doing things that seem stupidly risky. In this case, what Katia's doing, if I'm, reading this correctly, is keeping 3 IS-3s tied up firing at her 1 tank. And this is going to give her teammates some cover to move, because this is nearly half the enemy team that's engaging her right now. She's also doing some damage herself. Now, she's fired most of her AP at this point. She's decided to move over to the APCR because we're now at the stage of the game. There we go, she gets a kill. We're now at the stage of the game where they are starting to close the net around these enemies. They only have a couple of tanks left themselves, and they've lost a fair bit of health. So there's 2 behind the cap, there's 1 somewhere in the middle, and there was 1 on the J line, but he's clearly relocated. Katia can still afford to take a hit or 2 if need be. Manages to get a shot in the IS-3, and it's a pity she only takes the tracks because that potentially could have been a kill. And he wasn't trying to side scrape or anything there, but maybe you really can't from that particular house. A lot of the houses, by the way, if you've never played Pearl River, if you've not been playing that long, a lot of these houses were destructible. Not all of them, but around the mid area, especially with the rice paddies, a lot of those houses and walls and whatever could be knocked over. Now this one clearly is a destructible house because she was able to spend a shell and shoot through it. However, not able to get the kill on that IS-3. She's just sat there with like 7 hit points. And this is the thing, even with 7 hit points, that guy can still fire back. Although he's not having that great of a time with it. I mean, she's missed a bunch of her own shots, and I don't know where that one went, by the way. That was a hell of a miss. Like, RNG ate that shell. I'd want my credits back on that one. But the nature of the thing is that, RNG being such as it is, a bunch of their shots back at her missed as well. So they've rooted out all but one of the defending enemy tanks. The IS-3 that was on the J line clearly drops down into the river area, was able to make sort of a getaway without being spotted, and is probably under orders to just try and get on their cap. But they are capping the enemy base themselves, so they've well and truly lost at this point. They've got 1 tank left, and they've got multiple tanks available for capping. That enemy IS-3 cannot get back in time to cap, to decap rather. And even if they wanted to, they'd probably just get shot to bits trying to do anything about it. Now, because Katia is here, and, she's 1950 damage. If this was a random battle, that would be just a kind of fairly middling tier 8 random battle. You'd have done more than your own hit points, which is usually a good benchmark. But it's not really going to so much be that is the impressive figure out of this battle. Now, they've just won just as she gets here, and the IS-3 gets lit up. But it doesn't matter. They capped. And in team battles, in clan wars, it doesn't matter who does how much damage. What matters is that you win. And in this case, they did win. Now, there was some chat in the battle about, I don't know, XVM users comparing stats. And like I said, or possibly have said, I'm not sure actually, I've tried to... this is one of those ones where I've had to sit down and try multiple times to record it. But it's the ability to take orders. You might take a group of average players, and as long as they are all following the orders you give them and the plan is good, they can beat a team of statistically better players. Anyway, there we go. That was a 12-minute long game. And in that 12 minutes, 5,070 bounced damage. Not bad. Not bad at all. Next, this is that bit of Armoured Warfare footage. Now, like I said, not a replay. This was live recorded, and it was live recorded a while ago. This is Manti111. He actually sent me 2 bits of Zhalo gameplay, and I used one of them in a previous game. And if I was going to, at this point, show more Armoured Warfare footage, and this is a PvP game, you don't see... Well, I haven't seen that many PvP games. I haven't played that many PvP games myself. But, yeah, if I was going to show them at the moment, my preference would be this, for people recording it and then sending me the video file on Dropbox or whatever. And it would actually be interesting to see some PvP from Armoured Warfare. I personally just, like, it's both a good thing and a bad thing that it is, in so many ways, a similar game to World of Tanks. That it's kind of, you know, an evolution of the World of Tanks premise or core game design, whatever you want to call it. Because it means it's very familiar in a lot of ways, but at the same time, having burned out a bit on World of Tanks, it means I'm less inclined to go and play Armoured Warfare as well. But there are a lot of things that Armoured Warfare does that I like, especially as a PvP game. But I like the fact that it does PvE as a thing even more. Incidentally, I'm actually almost at my first tier 9, and I don't play it that much. In fact, there was a big long gap where I didn't play it because there was that whole thing about my.com and the oh, that nonsense with the packages that they did. And that just, like, I just walked away for a bit after that because it was just pure nonsense. And it wasn't Obsidian at all, it was the publisher, it was Mycom, who are apparently not great when it comes to this thing. They have got a certain reputation when it comes to these online free-to-play titles. But, yeah, I decided to give it a go again, and hopefully Mycom have learned from their mistake. They can't maybe get away with the things that they would get away with in the RU market on other markets, because people will get rather pissed off with them about it. It was a massive blunder on their part anyway. So, the Zhalo is a tier 4 premium tank destroyer. It's a wheeled tank destroyer, and this game's interesting in that it features both wheeled and tracked vehicles. And in the case of the Zhalo, it's got some nice points, but it's also got some limitations. As a tank destroyer, it doesn't particularly have good armor or view range. It is quite a long, large vehicle, but it's also fast, and it's got a good rate of fire and a very good aim time. You can really, like, you can get the shells out and aim and, you know, hit what you want to with relative rapidity, which is a nice feature. But it only gets AP, or well, AP, FP, PR, M, BBQ, DS, or whatever the shell designation is. I went off on a little alphabetical journey there. And high explosive plastic ammo. And you don't tend to use the HEP for much, except, I mean, you might on some of the very, very weakly armoured vehicles, you might get a penetrating hit. But generally speaking, like when I play PvE, the only time I use HEP ammo is to destroy the objective targets. It's not that useful otherwise. So he's mostly got the armor piercing rounds and a couple of HEP rounds just in case. So this map, I missed what it was called, but it's one that features in several PvE maps, but it's usually a cut down version. They do that a lot. They'll use the same maps for both things, but they will cordon off areas of the map, if you like, for PvE, and it's surprising how much it changes the feel of the thing. But his team, I mean, they just seem to have been able to move together as a cluster of tanks and basically mow down everything in their path. And I think just the nature of armoured warfare generally, the games tend to be perhaps somewhat quicker than World of Tanks because the guns are more accurate and they do more damage, so mistakes can be more costly, and this overall results in a much faster feel to the game. It's a different play style than World of Tanks. You'd never get away with something like the mouse in Armoured Warfare, and this just reflects, of course, the era of vehicles that are represented in the game. Because the nature of Armoured Warfare had changed a lot post World War II, and going into the 50s and the 60s. So they've got 2 tanks left now. I mean, they really, the enemy team really didn't make that much of an impact. They have killed a couple of Mantis' team, but this was a fairly runaway win. And I think that's largely true of PvP even today, that it's just barrels in there, takes the kill, why not? The matches, they don't tend to be particularly close fought a lot of the time, but that can happen in World of Tanks as well. There's actually, even just comparing the different the server metas, the playstyles across different servers on World of Tanks. My experience of playing the North American server tends to be that you get a lot more of these runaway victories or runaway losses, depending on which side of the equation you're on, than you do with the longer, more drawn out matches that I find are much more usual on the EU server. It's obviously just a difference in the way that the game is played. So maybe on the RU server the meta is completely different from Armoured Warfare as well, but possibly not. The Russian server in World of Tanks has a reputation as being a rather aggressive place, or the home of a rather aggressive playstyle. So as this was a premium, he made a nice fat amount of credits there. Premium with a premium account, as with World of Tanks, does stack up very well. Over 3,000 damage done. In fact, he did 3,333 damage, which is not bad. Nice, pleasing round number. 8 kills, and that got him top of the team with 1,901 base XP, which I think is pretty good for PvP. It's one of the bonuses. I almost said Bonerfits there. Yeah, I tried to portmanteau bonuses and benefits and came up with Bonerfits. Yeah, that's now a word. Playing PvP is so much more rewarding than playing PvE. I probably have like a tier 10 tank already if I played any serious amount of PvP, but I don't. I just chip away at PvE instead because it's so much less. I don't know. I can't get into the PvP in Armoured Warfare particularly, but like I said, I think that's just because it's unpleasantly reminds me of World of Tanks in some ways, just in the fact that it's a PvP tank game with hit bars, but I can't even do War Thunder. I think it's just, tank games generally I'm a bit washed out on. Still enjoying warships though. So, this was 2 things that were a bit different, and hopefully they were enjoyable. I hope they were anyway. That's the point of these videos, is to entertain and occasionally be useful in other ways. And if that was the case, well, you can do the usual things. You can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can sub to my channel if you aren't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.